Me to start the meeting, Chair? Okay. Thank you. Hello, everyone, and welcome to this evening's meeting of the Hampstead Heath Consultative Committee. My name is Zoe Williams, and I'll be clerking this evening's meeting. As you're aware, the public element of the meeting is being live streamed, and those participating in the meeting have given consent to their inclusion. The recording will be available on the City Corporation's YouTube channel following the meeting, and it shall be retained for up to 1 civic year. Whilst we endeavour to live stream all our public meetings, technical difficulties may sometimes prevent live broadcast. In these instances, we aim to upload a recording after the end of the meeting. All personal data will be processed in accordance with the Data Protection Act 2018. For any further information on that, please feel free to contact us. Welcome also to the public attending in the room. Please note you're most welcome to observe the public session of this meeting. However, we ask that public do not participate in the meeting. And once we move into the non-public session, I will ask that you leave the room. Thank you. Chair, any welcoming remarks?
Yes, thank you, and welcome everybody, and indeed I can still say Happy New Year. As you will be aware, I, as the Deputy, have been asked to chair the meeting because our actual chair, Gregory Jones, is abroad at the moment and he sends his apologies. So that's why I'm sort of resuming a familiar role that obviously I did when I was chair. But with that, can I also just mention, obviously, it's just been mentioned about the public, obviously people are welcome to observe. There was a request about photos. I think I take my lead from what happens in public inquiries, where happy for pictures to be taken sort of at the beginning. But once the business is underway, it can be very distracting. So if anyone does want to take pictures, now is the time to do it. I think once we are into our formal business, it really isn't appropriate. But as I say, it's very much something that I'm aware that people may want to do. Other than that, I think, so welcome to, we've got a fairly heavy agenda, obviously aware of some issues of particular concern. Also, I'm not sure if she's in the room or online, but so you'll be aware the Mansfield Conservation Area Advisory Committee had a change of representative, and Victoria Eze was appearing on behalf of the Associate Advisory Committee. I don't know if she's around. Maybe joining us. Are you online? No? Okay, we're aware she'd join us. People may be aware we had a paper where she was referred to as Dr. Holt, but I gather formally speaking, she wants to be referred to as Victoria Eze in terms of her representation. And, well, can I just record our welcome and thanks to the outgoing member who was before her. Any other apologies?
Thank you, Chair. Apologies have been received from Alderman Gregory Jones, Alethea Silk and Liz Andrew. Are there any more to be aware of?
Do you want to do next?
Item 2 is declarations of interest. I'm not aware of any, but may I ask if there are any declarations, please? Thank you. Item 3 is the minutes, Chairman.
Actually, I probably just mentioned something slightly out of order. I wanted to mark and thank a couple of members of our staff for whom this will be their last meeting. Firstly, Andrew Impey, people will be aware he's been our deputy director and very, very helpful in the time that he's been with us. But also, it's Jonathan Mears' last meeting, someone who's been a stalwart member of our staff, and particularly people know from Highgate Woods, but across the Heath and Queen's Park, and indeed was at one point acting superintendent. So I'm sure it's sort of probably bittersweet for Jonathan tonight. It's both actively interested in what we do, but probably a slight sense of relief that this may be his last meeting. But Jonathan, I did want to say at the beginning, thank you. Obviously, there'll be opportunities at other times, but I thought it'd be appropriate to mark it now. Can I then, with that sort of side note, return to thank you indeed. I think there may be time for speeches. Yeah. Thank you. The minutes, as people are aware, there are the minutes of our Consultative Committee on the 17th of November, which is within the pack, and it starts at page 7. We hope we've picked up the matters arising in other items within the report, but firstly, can I start with the minutes themselves? People happy to approve them? There's obviously a question.
Not a question, a correction, if I can. Yeah. On page 10, on the first full paragraph, I think there's a not that is missing. So the member, which is me, I think, expressed concern that although there was a governance structure whereby decisions for the charity were made by the City Corporation, there may be a perception that the charity was not entirely separate from the corporation.
Gosh, it's quite an important meaning to the sentence.
Yeah, changes it completely.
Yes. Any other points on the text of the minutes? I don't see any, in which case people are happy to approve them. Yep, thank you. I'm told there's a issue with one of the cameras. Hopefully people online can see. Michael Hammerson, I see there's a hand up.
Yes, thank you. Am I coming over okay?
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. Yes, that was the screen had gone blank, but it's back now. Thank you. Just a slight clarification on page 12, the third paragraph down, where it just said the noted Highgate Society noted the coverage this had received in local media. The point of the question was that it struck me that the way the news reports were worded conveyed that the pergola was being almost negligently allowed to fall into disrepair, and I was hoping that this could be addressed.
So in terms of the minutes themselves, are you happy with the wording, or are you saying noted the negative coverage? Would that be a better way to describe it?
Yes, or inaccurate. Yeah, yes, it's either negative or inaccurate, isn't it, or both?
Okay. And is there anything? Is that a matter arising to deal with, or I suppose we could pick it up?
Yeah.
Okay. Is there anything else, Michael?
No, thank you.
Thank you. Just pausing, looking around online and around the room. I don't think there's any further points, in which case, again, can I put the point, are people happy to approve the minutes? Thank you. So otherwise, we'll come back to points. The sports forum, obviously we have Richard Summery in the room, who chaired the meeting. This is essentially for information, and people can see the actions that have been highlighted. So is there anything further to add, or Richard, is there anything?
Just a couple of quick things from it. I mean, we had a good presentation from Paul Maskell on events, and a lot of them are repeat events, but one or two that potentially could be new. We had a very quick discussion about that on Saturday, but no doubt we will come back to it. We've got to get the right balance of sporting events with other people who use the Heath, and I think we've managed that over the last few years, but there will be changes, and there will need to be changes over the period ahead. One of the things that we didn't discuss on Saturday that I raised, I think, among others, is the park run, which I think we'll need to come back to. It's not on the agenda elsewhere today, but I know that there are issues around numbers, and I know that people like me would quite like to see a youth, a young youth run started as well. So there are balancing things there to take into account, and I think we'll need to take it back to the sports forum and have a discussion there. And then the only other thing I just want to mention is I think we're gradually finding our feet as a different kind of more strategic group, which is what we wanted to be, rather than the group that's picking up every single practical issue. That's not what this wellbeing forum should be about and is about. It's taking a bit of time to get there, but we will get there.
That's great. Has anyone got any questions on the sports related things? I know there's we'll come back to find about the changing rooms in the assistant director's report. And if there's anything else, people happy just to note that, and I was trying to say thank you, and also the fact that, as you say, there's a slightly different emphasis in the work that's now being asked of the group, and it's, as you say, it seems to be finding its feet. So thank you. The other thing on the minutes I want to just raise is that you don't at the moment have the draft of our 8th of December Management Committee meeting minutes. I did ask about this. Apparently they're still remaining draft, and Zoe, perhaps give us an update on when they will be available to be circulated.
Yes, thank you, Chair. So, yeah, apologies, members, as that meeting on the 8th of December was an extraordinary meeting. It was unfortunately not possible to produce those minutes of the meeting in time for publication for this meeting. So the minutes will be distributed to members for your information next week, and they'll be added to the agenda for the next Consultative Committee meeting.
I think in terms of board decision making, it's just worth noting there was an item regarding the budget which was not proceeded with. So if people were following the agenda, it was decided to adjourn that and to basically come back to it. So you're not missing anything there. In terms of the cafes, obviously that was the time that decision was made, and clearly that's something we'll be further discussing. But as was mentioned, it was an extraordinary meeting, so there wasn't the normal run of business. So I don't think there's anything else we need to specifically pick up. We've got a couple of questions. Yep. Firstly, Mr. Wagg, and then go on, Gregory.
Yes, Chair. I remember that one of the reasons for receiving these minutes next week was for us to be able to give feedback relative to the next meeting of the Finance Committee in February, because that is when the budget would be finalized. So are you saying basically that's all been postponed a bit anyway? Is that the message from?
It'd be a fair point to cover. What can we cover? What's happening with the budget and the timing of that? You happy to do that now?
I can answer that as best as I can.
Yep.
So yes, so there was a proposal that went to Finance Committee today, which asked for approval of the principles of the grant funding model, but also asked for in principle approval of an additional ask, kind of the rebaselined ask that we'd obviously been working on and mentioned previously. So that was approved again, but it's subject to detailed business cases being produced by our department working with Chamberlains, which will look at, for example, include a health and safety audit and also workforce efficiency review, just to make sure that we're actually evidencing the need for additional resourcing. So we will be going back to Finance Committee with those detailed business plans, but it has been an approval in principle, which I think is very positive news, and we'll be working very closely with Chamberlains on that. And then also just to note that I think the process that we're proposing now in terms of the budget is for that the budget papers to include that rebaselined amount, but to note that actually that's subject to final approval by Finance Committee and subject to the business cases, but that's what will be put forward to our main committee. Thank you.
And I suppose just the supplementary thing is, at what point do people on the consultation committee get to see that?
So what we've talked about today is I've just asked our Chamberlains colleagues to go away and update the paper. So they'll be working on that this week, and they'll be sending out that paper to the main committee members. And we've asked that the consultative committee members receive it as soon as possible, so exactly the same time as the main committee receive it.
Colin, Gregory?
Oh, thank you, Chair. I was going to make the same point, which I think has now been clarified about our opportunity to input into the budget. Separately, you alluded to the relevance of the last main committee meeting to the decision on cafes. When that comes up in this agenda, perhaps you could summarise what the main committee relevant points the main committee made, since we don't have the minutes. Thank you, Chair. As they come up in the discussion, if you see what I mean, so that to the extent that we would have had that information in front of us, perhaps you could just give that to the meeting yourself, sir. Thank you.
So what we can do, obviously, there's some who've got knowledge of it, and inevitably there was some in non-public and some in public. So
Indeed.
And I think otherwise, it's obviously frustrating given the timing that we don't have the actual document yet. But we'll have it shortly in terms of the minutes. I think otherwise, probably appropriate to pass to the Assistant Director's report. Not seeing any other hands. This obviously covers a whole series of points. Partly in your hands, Bill, as to how we deal with it. A couple of things I think you wanted to update as well.
Thanks, Chairman. Yes, just several items wanted to give an update on, or specifically point out to members. I think a bit of well-earned good news. The Heath won 3 gold medals in the London and Bloom competition in the respective categories. Golders Hill Park won for Best Large Park, the Hill Garden for Best Small Park, and Pergola in its respective class. And I just want to note these awards are not just given out, they're certainly earned. So I think reflective of the hard work that the team does on the Heath to make it a really inviting, beautiful place. I wanted to point that out. I am thrilled to announce that we are ready to begin works on the wildlife island at the model boating pond. It's taken a bit of time to get here, but I understand that work will begin on the 14th of February. We think that will last between 3 and 4 weeks, weather permitting. And I specifically wanted to note that this project was entirely funded by external donors. So incredibly grateful to the surrounding community who's made the project possible that we wouldn't have otherwise been able to do. And just to bring people up to speed, if you're not familiar with it, it is essentially removing the isthmus, the land bridge that connects to the island in the model boating pond, and creating a true area set aside for wildlife. Is going to have some great impacts, beneficial impacts, and looking forward to showing members on a future walk on the Heath. Chairman, I did want to just bring members' attention to the Camden Nature Corridor, if they're not already. It's an initiative being coordinated by the Heath and Hampstead Society, essentially to create a biodiversity corridor with Hampstead Heath kind of as the anchor through small nature reserves and new housing developments in central Camden. And the objective is to make the Heath biodiversity and habitats more resilient to all the increased footfall and pressures that are in the future and coming and occurring already. The North London team has been supportive of this initiative, which is now been memorialized in planning documents as a designated priority infrastructure for Camden Council, as I understand it. And Professor Vaga has been a lead on this. I'm not sure, Jeff, if there's anything else you wanted to add, but I think it's a good development in Camden and a good way to further support the Heath and nature generally.
Well, thanks, Phil. I'd just like to express my appreciation for this item in here so that people are more aware of it, and point out that although a lot of this is off the Heath, it's going to, as you said, the idea is to generate resources, funding for the city to strengthen the biodiversity and the natural habitats around Parliament Hill in advance of an estimated 43,000 new residents there in the next 15 years, and the Heath line, which will connect it to major transport infrastructure in London. All welcome, but we need to make sure that the habitats are resilient. And I think it will also be able to raise appreciation of the Heath in the local community and in the council and the local borough, because it will be important for them too to have this resource there for all of these new residents. So thanks.
Thanks for your work on that, Jeff. And noted in paragraph 21, we have seen an increase in recent years in problematic cycling on the Heath. There's been a lot of cycling at excessive speeds, also cycling in non-permitted areas. So it is an area where we're turning our attention this year. I'm thrilled to announce that we will be hiring in 3 additional constables, recruiting for a 4th as well. We're hoping that they'll get started probably in early February. But some of the things we're looking at is increased enforcement to make sure that cycling is occurring in the places where it's permitted in an appropriate way to ensure public safety, ensuring that there's appropriate signage, and really trying to strike that balance that we're always trying to strike on how much signage is absolutely necessary and effective, and looking at potentially some traffic calming measures, perhaps on the main boulevard in Parliament Hill. But that's just an idea at this point. Nothing has been proposed, and also proactive messaging. So that's something that Constabulary will be spending a lot of time on this coming year. Now, but certainly once the weather warms up. In addition, I wanted to just note that we're continuing to look at the changing rooms on Heath Extension. We discussed, I think, in the last meeting, a real problem here with Legionella that is just not going away. So we're awaiting some costings and quotes from the City Surveyor's Department on various options that are available to try and address that. Charlotte's been working really hard on this, and I think we'll hopefully be getting some more information towards the end of this month. But I do want to, again, just kind of underscore what we discussed at the last committee. That we may have some difficult decisions coming up in the future, because these could be potentially really expensive interventions. That is a really critical piece of infrastructure, certainly for the rugby club, and we want to keep it open and available to them and support the rugby club and all of our sports clubs as best as we can. But we really have to start thinking about how we invest the limited resources we have. So hopefully by the time we meet next, we can share some additional updates on what options are available and what they might cost. Charlotte, I'm not sure if there's anything else you wanted to add.
Thanks, Bill. I think that the options I've outlined in the paper clearly states where we are in order to look at sort of the options that we're faced with. And really just to say, support what Bill is saying, is that we do want to keep them open. We do want to keep them operational, but we do have the ongoing issue of Legionella, and that is exasperated by the changing rooms not being used daily, and therefore the reliance on staff to have to flush through the dead leg system of the mains water pipe through to each showers, which is on average 2 to 3 hours twice a week for my staff, and once a week for the CBRE's contracted supplier to do that as well. So it's a lot of cost and time to do that. We've explored volunteering as well, and whilst that would be a brilliant idea, it is a volunteering. So if volunteers are not able to turn up for any reason, that means then the showers don't get flushed through. We have also looked at the possibility of other clubs and associations using the pitches out on weekdays. We've contacted colleges and universities, and there is an appetite to use those pitches, but bearing in mind, with more use means more damage to those pitches, which then may help the changing rooms, but won't support then the ongoing maintenance costs for keeping those pitches in a good condition for Hampstead Rugby Club and others and other clubs.
I was about to say, probably worth just pausing here. I know you say it's going to come back, but there may well be questions at this point. I just like to just pause just more generally, and I think I'm right in welcoming Dr. Victoria Ezza. Is that right? Just so you know where we are, we're sort of page 27 or so of the pack. We've gone through the minutes, and obviously most of the time the items arising will come up in the reports. So you're not that far into the meeting. And just so you know, I know we haven't met. I'm William Upton. I was chair and now deputy chair. So Gregory Jones gave his apologies, but I say I did give a welcome in the hope if you weren't here, you'd at least see the recording. But now you are here, I can still say welcome. But with that sort of side note, can I go back to this point about the changing rooms? Colin Gregory.
Yes, thank you, Chair. We had a useful discussion with the Superintendent and with Charlotte at the walk on Saturday, and I understand completely the difficulty of the issue, its intractability, and I think the key thing is that we will need to know what the costs, as Charlotte has said, of the various options are. But I'm conscious that this is taking place at a time when the budget is being set, and I don't know whether this counts as local risk expenditure or whether it goes into the some capital program. Perhaps that could be clarified. But I'd urge that all possible options are considered. I did wonder whether some robot or automated way of flushing them is possible. But we need to know things like how much it would cost to reconstruct the whole area and how that would be factored into other priorities. Thank you, Chair.
And Richard, summary, maybe we take the points and then in response.
Yes, I mean, I understand the problems. I'm both the hospital trust that I've chaired has had major problems with Legionnaires' disease, and it's difficult to resolve. I was wondering whether or not the one of the possible solutions would actually be a completely major refurbishment of them, which isn't in the options here, I don't think, or it's not what I read in the options here. Because in the longer run, that may be better than options that might just alleviate the problem for a short period of time, but then it comes back again because it can't be resolved locally. The danger is that there's a spiral here. You can't resolve that. Therefore, the sports activities on the extension go down, and therefore you have problems, even more problems with the showers and so on. So it ends up with little usage of the extension of the Heath, and the extension of the Heath is a really important resource for sports clubs and indeed other local activities. So I think we must try and find essential to try and find a solution that does not cause that to happen, whatever that may be, and indeed almost whatever the cost might be, and therefore it's important to factor even the major costs in at the outset. But I appreciate the work that Charlotte's doing on this, and it's not easy.
Sorry, Chair, could I have an answer on the point about how it comes in the budget?
Yes, I mean, I was going to collect points, but it sounds like an appropriate point to respond to both yours and Richard Summary's. Shall we deal with the points that have been raised and then come back to Ella's query?
Okay, sorry. Thank you, Chair. With regards to the budget, our City Surveyors Department do have an allocated budget for the Heath Extension changing rooms. However, that amount is only for decorations, so simply for painting, decorating of the internals of the changing rooms. It is possible that we may be able to use that allocated fund for works to work out the piping or whatever is needed in terms of the Legionella. However, until we've got the full costings for each of the options, we don't know where we are with it. There is no point putting the money into decorations if the changing rooms aren't opened and able to be used. So there is an allocated amount, but it may not cover what we need in order to actually rid or reduce the risk of Legionella. If there is a funding for the built asset, that would come from City Surveyors. Any sort of additional works that we choose as the client, we would take out of the local risk budget.
Thank you, Chair. I think that means that in the financial year 26-27, this would still remain centrally funded, assuming it's more than decorative or sort of minor works. Is that, can I just clarify that is right? Thank you, Chair.
Just to confirm, they have said that they do not have the budget in order to do what would be considered more works to these facilities, other than the decorations. So unless we look at how much each of the options cost, we can ask for them to reallocate those lines for the piping, for example. But if we would imagine, say, for example, that as Richard has highlighted, that we decommission one side of the building, but if we're looking for a completely new system with a new boiler, that is going to exceed the amount that is within that allocated budget. But to come back, yes, it is down to the City Surveyors Department as one of their assets, but they do not have the required budget we envisage will come across in order to do the necessary repairs.
Forgive me, Chair, but yes, thank you. I think that means, therefore, that going forward, it still remains part of the central responsibility with city surveyors, but there is no budget for it. So it's an example of something that perhaps we know might crop up in the next financial year that would not be within the grant that's coming to the local risk, to replace the local risk budget. And therefore, I'm not quite clear how discussions would proceed on getting it funded, but I can see that there is no funding for it as things currently stand. Thank you, Chair.
Obviously, just pause then on the budget point because it will be coming back, but it's obviously questions that will need addressing. Now, Ella Mitchell will be very patient. do you want to raise points on this?
Oh, yes, I guess. So firstly, it's a shame to hear that. I think from the report, it sounds, sorry, something's just fallen off the desk. It sounds like the senior sides are unlikely to be able to play again on the Heath extensions this season, which, yeah, it's a shame to hear, but we do understand the reasons behind health and safety, and club membership backs that. I think there's been some information that Deborah Crossan, our club chair, has shared with Charlotte, which would be good to investigate further from the RFU facilities team. And I don't know if that's been shared with the city surveyors, or whether that's been explored, or whether that's worth kind of putting them in touch directly with your teams. I think, you know, the costings are going to be the important factor to understand more about what the options are and how they might how they might look and what the costings are associated with those. And then we can look at funding opportunities that might be available with the RFU and other sources potentially to look at supporting some of that work. But very happy to keep working with you on that aspect.
Thank you, Ella. So just to clarify, yes, I have passed on that information, which was forwarded to me from the chair of Hampstead Rugby Club, and I have liaised directly with City Surveyors Department about it, and that is one of the costings they're looking at, because they have their own suppliers and their own systems in order to do something similar. So as soon as we get the costings, I think we're in a much better position to be able to answer and present to committees the next discussions, the next options.
Thank you. I think it's obviously very important, this point about potential external funding assistance. I think that, I know you have to have option 5, decommission the entire building, as part of the sort of benchmarking of any funding, but it's highly undesirable. This is the whole point of having these pitches there in the first place. And there's just been mentioned, if we haven't got changing rooms, then people are unable to play. I mean, that just seems, you know, the worst option of all. But I know it's work in progress. But can I also, I suppose, say from our point of view that it really helps to have the rugby club and its members involved, because this is not something we can do on our own. It really has to be a collaboration. And thank you for the work to date. But yeah, it's an ongoing unresolved point, I can see.
Just to say, option 5 is probably our least preferred option. If
yeah, I mean, it would just be so unwelcome. Yeah. Yeah, sorry, the question in the room. Yeah.
Totally radical idea. So sorry if this is bonkersly left of field, but you're talking about this amazing open space for people to use. What about encouraging running clubs to use it at random other evenings, like some of the groups that, like Black Girls Do Run UK and Black Trail Runners, to use it as a facility for free, but with showers. Hooray. And then you get your showers flushed. I've got contacts that I could put you in touch with, loads of people you could make a safe, that would, you know, because some of it could be about it being a safe space to run that's on trails, but like, yeah.
Certainly, we're thinking through every permutation that we can to keep it going. You know, Richard, I think you raise an important point. We want to make sure that if there's any cycles being created, they're upward and positive, not the other direction. And we certainly want to see the rugby club and other clubs thrive, not struggle. The challenge with the changing rooms is they need to be open and closed by staff, and getting staff up to the extension who are typically based at Golders Hill Park, because that's the way our operations run, and a thin staff, it's a hike, or a run, pun intended, to get up there. So I don't think that's feasible, but I think to your point, we are thinking about creative solutions, I should say.
Also, just to add, there's no car parking, which does, and it's sort of set within the Heath extension, which also does then cause a bit of a cause for people arriving not by public transport to come to the Heath extension.
How about to say the options are getting a bit too broad then? No, well, thank you. Certainly the ideas are welcome, because it did occur to me when we said the staffing having an issue was whether it's a volunteer support was possible, but it's actually broader use is also within that category. But as I say, it sounds like we're going to return to it. Should we leave that point there for the moment? Obviously, if people have other further things, please do follow up. Within your report, where next? Sorry? Oh, I have just been pointed out, there's a hand up from Helen Payne. I'm sorry, Helen, you're such a small box on the screen, I missed it. But is this on this issue? And you're,
Hello, can you hear me? Sorry. Well, actually, it was on item 39, the sandpit. I just didn't want you to go beyond it.
Bill, where are we in your running order?
I believe we're still exchanging documents with Barnet Council. We are confident we can get it done this calendar year, assuming that we get the documentation sorted relatively soon. But I know Charlotte is doing what she can in parallel to make sure it's ready to go. But the £65,000 grant of SIL has been approved. Again, we're just finalizing the documents that are necessary for the corporation to begin the work with confidence, knowing that we will receive the funding once we've done it, Helen. But our every intention is that it will be done this year. We would love to get it done in time for the warm weather, of course. And we would really like to do an event down at Golders Hill Park to announce the works that are being done. One, to celebrate with our partners in Barnet, to whom we're grateful, and two, just to make people aware that we have a great new improved playground in Golders Hill Park.
Could I just say, it's just to remind you, I think, unless Charlotte corrects me, I think it's been 2 years since it's been closed now. And I was there the other day. It's now got buddleia in it, amongst other things. It looks very sad. And I think 2 years is quite a long time. And this is sort of, to Colin's point about funding, this is external funding. And I just wonder, I mean, I hope this year means this financial year rather than the whole year.
I just don't think we'll get it done this financial year. Charlotte will correct me if I'm wrong. We're talking about the calendar year, Helen. We are working as quickly as we can within the processes we have.
Can I just check, in terms of the overall budget, how much 65,000 actually represent? I presume some going in from us as well. Yes, it's not wholly funded by them. It's us as well. And because of the scale of the project, it therefore has to go through more process than will otherwise be the case. But I suppose yes, we're all slightly disappointed to hear we're talking about 12 months to do it. Is there any way of doing it quicker?
It won't take 12 months. I'm just saying it'll be done this year. Our ability to start, our ability to get a contractor to commit to a start date, and our ability to give you a date is dependent on us finishing the documents with the council, and we're in regular communication with them and hopeful that that will be concluded soon. Again, we are working for the warm weather months. That is the goal, but we do have to work through all of the processes, both internal to the City of London Corporation and also with Barnet Council.
Okay, that probably deals with that point. We're roughly at about 39.40 in your report.
Just a couple more updates, Chairman. Regarding the ponds access consultation that closed on the 25th of November, the consultants that were brought on are now analyzing the results.
We're having a separate update on that, I understand, verbally. Yeah.
Yes, and I believe Andrew will be giving an update on
so we'll
later.
Come back to that then. Yeah.
And finally, Chairman, maybe not finally, as you know, the management committee has made a decision on the cafes, the 5 cafes.
Just before you get there, I was interested in the Waits City Corporation contractor, so the building contractor contributing. It says £20,000 in value. Is that so? It's sort of the value of the work that's done, not just financially, or that they did the work. And it just struck me as a sort of one-off and really quite significant contribution. Is that something that is a one-off, or is it something else that may occur, or how did it come about?
Chairman, I'll ask Andrew to provide some additional information, as it's his team that oversees it, but I understand this was a one-off. We were able to work with Waits, who is a contractor of the corporation, as you know, to both do some work and donate some materials for the learning team and enhance the space that they work in. Andrew, I'm not sure if there's anything else you wanted to add, but I do believe this was a one-off, but we, of course, would welcome further collaboration with all contractors.
Yeah, it was a one-off. Every year they choose a charity to work with. They chose us this year because they enjoy working on the site and they think it was a great project. They really enjoyed doing the work. They were really pleased with the response that they received. So as much as it was a one-off, I think there's opportunities to nurture the relationship that we might do a second one. But yeah, it was brilliant, really exciting work, and we're hugely grateful, and that's been fed back to them.
Thank you. But as I say, I wanted to acknowledge our thanks. I think that it's very nice to have that contribution. Yes, Gregory.
Can I just make a couple of comments on matters that I think we've sort of gone past in the assistant director's
Yeah,
report?
no, that's fine. I wanted to tell you, you're absolutely right. Roughly speaking, where we are within the report is sort of in the 60s. If there's something you wanted to pick up before that.
Just a couple. One on paragraph 36 on page 29, and then another one on 67, which I'm not sure whether we've got to yet or not. On the signs, I acknowledge that, first of all, the signs are in need of repair, and also that the way in which the signage projects who owns the Heath, who runs it, and what it is, are critical and need to be thought about really carefully in the context of going forward with the new focus on charity. I'd just like to ensure that the Consultative Committee will be involved in the design of them. We were last time, and last time this happened, I think it's fair to say that the sort of dignity and longevity of the city corporation were a key factor that the signs reflected. When you look at them, they look a little bit like banks used to look, with columns on the side and portico. If a new image is sought, I think it's very important that we have an input into what that should be going forward. Thank you, Chair. Do you want me to make my other point or to pause there?
Sorry, we can take those in turns. I mean, the signage, yes, I sort of flagged in my mind. Where are we?
I can start with that, I think, and then possibly hand over to Lisa. So there has been recently a report that's gone to, I believe it's Corporate Services Committee. Which, do you want to take over, Lisa, actually? That's fine.
So I'm Lisa Ward, Director of Communications, Transformation and Strategy here at the City. So we are doing a piece of work on branding across the whole of the City Corporation. And as part of that, we have been talking to the Natural Environment team about their requirements. And so absolutely take that on board. We're keen to get the signage right. And we're keen very much to make it very clear that it is a charity which is run by the City of London Corporation. So therefore reducing the prominence of the City of London Corporation when we finally get to the final designs. But there is more work to do on that, and so we can take that action away.
Thank you. You had a second point.
Yes, thank you, Chair. This is on paragraph 67, which is about the city surveyor's sort of backlog and reactive maintenance. It's somewhat concerning to read that they've got a significant overspend on reactive maintenance works, and basically there's a moratorium on anything being done for the 31st of March. I'm not sure how this feeds into what we've been previously told about sort of backlog of cyclical works that City Surveyors is addressing, whether this is specifically to do with new things that arise unexpectedly, or whether this is going to have an impact on things that we were expecting to happen in the current period. Thank you, Chair.
I mean, I think we will need a more specific response from City Surveyors, but my understanding is that the reactive maintenance budget is separate to the backlog budget. So therefore, the two, they're not interdependent, and one doesn't have an impact on the other. But I can certainly get more detail on that from City Surveyors colleagues for you.
Thanks. I'm grateful for the director's reply, and it would be helpful if there is something to tell us on that, that it would be just circulated by the town clerk. Thank you, Chair.
No, fair point. Michael Hammerson's got a hand up, and then Richard Summary's got a hand up. Is that okay in that order?
Yes, thank you. Just a couple of queries really on two of the statements. I'm not questioning them, but some clarification would be interesting. On page 22, paragraph 3, it says that only 3 bats were recorded this year, and this is an incredibly low total. Does it signal any decline in the bats, or is there some other statistical or other reason for that?
Shall we do that specific query? Is 3 an exceptional number? Which I feel like more or less at this point. Is it?
I'd have to defer to my colleague, the ecologist, Adrian Brooker. So can I take that question away and I will get back to you?
Okay. And my other point, on page 32, paragraph 51, talking about the use of the labour centres, it says that London's residents have the least amount of green space per person in any region. Now, we're always being told that London is an exceptionally green city, but if this is in fact the case, it would be very helpful to be able to have the source for that information, because with the increasing pressure on green space and including green belt and MOL for development recently, it would be very helpful to be able to have the source of this information when we're trying to defend open spaces.
Chairman, I will take that up with the learning team, because I think that figure came from Abby. But again, my understanding is that that actually the regions kind of London is a very urban region, whereas actually most of the other regions have a much higher proportion of semi-urban and rural green space. So, but I will certainly go back to Abby, who's our head of learning, and ask her what the source of that information was.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. That would be helpful.
Thank you. And then Richard Summary in the room.
Yeah, 2 issues. One is just to follow up from the point on paragraph 67, because the question I had on this was how that would be dealt with in future years if the City Surveyors Department has overspent and then that's cut back, when there may be some urgent requirements from the charity, as it will be then, with the responsibility there. And how would that play out? You may not have an answer for that now, but if you have, that would be helpful. My second point, if I can, is actually, and maybe I should apologise because I raised this at every single meeting, but there is a number of aspects here around what the constabulary will do. So there will be a review of the dog licence and how the usage is there. We talked on Saturday about swimming and unauthorised swimming, both the use of the ladies' pond, but also the boating pond and indeed other ponds, and the constabulary would have a role there. We also talked this evening, Bill's mentioned cycling and the problems with cycling. I still do not understand, with a constabulary of 6 that there will be, is that correct, or 7? I still do not understand how on earth those issues, alongside all the other reactive issues that the constabulary will need to be involved in, that actually will play out effectively. And I still maintain that the numbers, even welcoming the appointments of the 3 or that will come on board, will be able to deal with all of these issues, particularly in the light of the fact that I keep on stressing the importance of the constabulary on the Heath is visibility. As much as anything else, it's visibility. And I think that cyclists will cycle if they don't see that visibility. And that's going to be difficult to hold. So I'm sorry to raise it again, but I know it's a bone of contention with the centre, but I still think the decision of the centre was wrong, and I will continue to repeat it, and recognising that there will be, I know, a review of this in a year's time.
Do you want to just pick up the constabulary point? The whole point of the Consultation Committee is that these things get discussed. So, yeah.
So thank you, Chair. Just on the, before Bill comes in, on the specific point, I think Emily mentioned earlier that we have had a commitment from Finance Committee this afternoon to look at the baseline budget, and that is something that we're doing. And I think the points that you raise are points that the superintendent has obviously raised with me and with the team. So it is something we are looking at. So we will endeavour to update the committee on those conversations. But in terms of the budget point, I just wanted to come in on that. But Bill might want to, I don't know if there's anything further to add in this specific point.
Constabulary.
Yeah, other than just to say, Richard, I agree 100%, and I think the visibility is worth as much as anything else. It's going to be helpful to have 3 additional, and hopefully another 4 by the end of the spring. We hope. We would welcome additional constables if resources can be found. And with the size of the force we have, we are doing our best. I think you all know how hard the constabulary works, to be visible, to have patrols that are hitting as many areas and as many hotspots as needed, while doing kind of targeted work like cycling and commercial dog walking, and various other things as possible. But we'll continue to welcome any feedback on where you think there were areas where the constabulary can be focusing on within its existing staffing. And Richard, on your point of signage and who pays for it, it's an open question. We have a little bit of funding, hence our need to prioritize and understand this is going to be a multi-year program. And one thing we're going to have to think through with Lisa and Katie and Emily and everybody else is how we prioritize the replacement of signs. Will we try to do one specific area at a time, or will we work across the entire Heath, working on only those signs that need to be updated the best, understanding there will be potentially a different design and what the aesthetics of that will be. So, when you start thinking about signage, you assume it must be pretty simple, but it's actually a bit more complicated than that, as Colin knows from his gesticulating or his nodding over there. But we will be back to the consultative committee to give an update and have a conversation on where we go. It sounds like this is not the first time this conversation has been had.
Thank you. I can see John Etheridge's got a hand up.
Yes, yeah, could we go back to 34 and 35? There's been a bit of concern up at the men's pond and apparently at the Kenwood ladies pond as well. They've about sauna, about the installation of saunas, and both those ponds have voted very decisively against the idea of having a sauna. Now, this was the BBC put out something a few days ago about the mixed pond perhaps being, people wanting to install a sauna at the mixed pond, but they apparently haven't taken a vote. But I just wanted to, or I was asked to make the point that at the men's pond and the ladies' pond, they've definitely made a vote against having a sauna. I don't know if that's even on the city's agenda, but is that a reasonable point to make?
I think it's a totally reasonable point to make, though. As you say, it is extraordinary how a small local issue like a sauna gets into national news, but there we go. No,
it's very handy.
But there is obviously therefore a nationally important issue to address. Over to you, Bill. Where are we?
Thanks for that, John. Just I want rest assured, nothing has been decided. I think we have the business plan in this committee's report, and a lot of things are reviews and looking at potential work and picking up some work that just hasn't happened that should have years ago or wasn't able to happen years ago. Looking at saunas is one thing for a number of reasons. They're popular, probably every other day. Charlotte is getting outreach from people who are interested in talking about saunas, both swimmers and other parties. So it's something we're looking at. I appreciate the question because it gives me a chance to just confirm nothing has been decided. Right. It's ripe for conversation, so we're looking at it.
Thank you, Bill. Thank you very much. Okay.
Thank you. In which case, I think that probably takes us on to your section. Unless there's anything else. See, there's points of. Oh yes, I'm pointing about the huts and the new leisure management system. I understand that's on course. But in terms of the planning application process, still to be decided. But I think everyone who wanted to be consulted has been consulted. Is that right? I hope people are aware that the revised design has occurred. Can we just have, I suppose, an update on where we are on it
Yeah, I can confirm that we have liaised with all of the swimming user groups, and we took it to the swim forum and discussed the detail of the huts with them. A final design has been now put forward and submitted to Camden Planning Department. That the application was submitted just before Christmas, and the statutory deadline for Camden to get back to us is the 10th of February. And this is for 2 new kiosks, which are for the for the men's pond and the mixed pond. And this is to host the stewards and also to enable our new hardware and software for our new leisure management system, which is the new booking system we hope to go live with in March, April this year. The kiosks will be cladded in timber, a natural timber, taking on the views of the swimmers and the user groups, and we have submitted a suitable planting plan to go with that application so that it will be in keeping with the aesthetics and the natural surroundings of both ponds.
Yeah, I know it was controversial just at the beginning, but it sounds like everyone's pointing in the same direction now. Unless there are any other queries on it, thank you. I think, John Etheridge, you've got a hand up. I'm treating it as a legacy hand. That's fine.
Sorry, legacy hand. It should have gone.
Oh, thank you.
I pressed the button. Hang on.
No, it's gone off our screen, so that's good. Oh no, let's turn up again. There we go. Anyway, as long as we know what it is. Bill, in terms then, obviously you've covered the zoo and things like that. I suppose we should deal with the issue of the cafes. I know you were about to until I went back and said there were some other items. I suppose the important thing obviously here is as was said, there was a decision made. And I'm conscious that some of what I suppose I also did the introduction, because of course having you part of the decision-making committee, we're hugely aware of the commercial sensitivities, and therefore there's a limit to what can be said in public. Because this is not just a sort of public process where everyone pores over the numbers. There were 30 bids to consider. There was all that information that people submit on a confidential basis. And certainly from the point of view of the committee, it was a fair process. Announced in July last year. The first people to be told even before it went out were the current operators. Obviously, our decision in December had a delay because you need to make sure due diligence is covered and that the heads of terms are agreed. So I think it's a matter of regret. We were told December the 8th would be a matter of a few days before everyone was told. It took until December the 19th, just because of the way these things go, for it to become public. But the first people were told before any notices were out were the current operators. So I'm obviously conscious that those who come second or worse than second will be disappointed in the result. But everybody's information was read, considered, scored, and considered seriously about what the long-term future of these cafes should be for the next 5, 10, 15 years. And of course, as we know, that involves not just the quality of the offer, but also to some extent the financial issues and the investment issues as a separate issue on top of that. Now, Bill, you've obviously seen a lot of the press, honestly. We're aware of a petition after the event. So I suppose the question has been raised, are we still happy with the justification for the decision made? Because obviously one wants to review any decision that people query and that isn't necessarily understood. And I'm also conscious that there's potential legal proceeding in the offing which ties people's hands in what they can say. But as we are at the moment, could you, I suppose, just summarise if there's any updates, what's in the report?
Well, thank you, Chairman. As you know, there was a competitive process that was robustly responded to. Officers spent a considerable amount of time going through the proposals and obviously discussed it with the committee. And it's not lost on officers that, in competitive processes, those who do not prevail, it will be disappointed. That is understood and acknowledged. I don't have a whole lot more update than what is in my report, other than to just note that we are taking the next steps and moving forward. We are talking with the incoming operator on a provision of a temporary service We are working with them on the fit out that will have to happen. As you know, you have to come in. There's a number of works that need to happen both on the interior and exterior of the buildings, and the exterior improvements are going to be made by the city surveyors department through the cyclical work program. So we're hoping to phase those and make sure that those occur in parallel to limit any disruption. And we'll continue to keep the committee updated. In addition to that, Chairman, as I mentioned, we will provide additional information. We are confident that the new operator, DC Green, will bring a good offer on Hampstead Heath. I know that they've been engaging with a number of stakeholders, a number of groups, and are keen to help form the cafes and think about their future with the people who use the cafes. So I encourage people to participate in that process. And that's the update, Chairman.
Okay, well, I'm conscious people may have questions. Obviously, been in front of the consultation committee about the process, and obviously people have been engaged as to what was intended. I don't know if people have further queries, and it's just to say in this context, I'm happy to go down the table. All right. Do you want to go first, or all right?
Obviously, the process we've been through lots. Now we finally know about the winner. And just looking at their website now in terms of earlier documents here where we've got Heath is inclusive and welcoming on page 29, and just referring to their offering. But very briefly, and this is just looking at their website, they're offering a relaxed, buzzy Australian food and coffee. It says, we can throw a party. Brand launches, bottomless boozy lunches, wine tasting, private dinners, weddings. We have hosted the Bank of America, Meta, Netflix, CNN, Santander, Microsoft, Vogue, Elemis, Coach, and Qantas. To arrange private hire for bigger parties, please get in touch. My concern is whether Daisy Green are really the right fit with our cafes on the Heath.
I suppose all change is different. I mean, it's to my understanding, we still remain in control of what happens and what is possible. And general announcements, what they may do other places, doesn't apply here. I mean, Bill, perhaps it is worth just explaining a bit more. How is it that the conclusion was reached they are doing different things at different cafes?
You're right. Thank you for the note, John. The operator does have other cafes and eateries, and they are all different. This is one thing we talked to them at length about. And as you note, there are different things at different spaces. Some of the things you mentioned there are not appropriate for the Heath and will not be occurring. We did our due diligence. Officers really put a lot of time into this. DC Green has been very clear, and I think forthcoming, that they will be creating cafes that are unique to the spaces that they will be moving into. They recognize the specialness of Hampstead Heath, the specialness of the specific buildings and spaces and the communities that they will be serving. And I think they've been pretty consistent in their announcements on that. And as I mentioned earlier, they have, opened up an online forum where they're interested to hear from people. They did submit, everybody was given a chance to submit sample menus and concept plans and what they would do, what their approach to engaging with communities would be, their environmental bona fides. And they are asking people, people who use the Heath, please provide input. That will help us refine and improve what we're going to do. So I think it's fair to look at the website, but I would say the website does not yet include information on cafes on Hampstead Heath. And some of the things you raised have been discussed. I will just specifically note there will be no boozy brunch in Hampstead Heath. That is appropriate in some places, perhaps, but I think there's a consensus. It's not in Hampstead.
Thank you. Now, I'm conscious some other hands were raised. Mr. Summary? Oh, no, sort of. Yes, I got the impression.
I don't have a problem with retendering because I think after a number of years, it's actually not an inappropriate thing to do. I really don't have that as a problem. We do it in all sorts of guises. It also needs to be made clear that this committee is not responsible for the decisions, as seemingly some people think they were, because all we were looking at potentially were processes. And I think it's rather difficult for us as a consultative committee to try and understand how the decisions were made, because we haven't seen the presentations or been part of the presentations. I have 2 or 3 comments to make, one of which may be an omission on my part, because I didn't understand, and I want to know the implications on in paragraph 25 about the fact that the operators needed to demonstrate experience and success in other and varied high volume locations, because that seems to indicate that the extant operators who may not have had operations elsewhere may have been prejudiced by that. I just want to understand that bit. The second thing is, it was probably not inevitable, but one of the obvious consequences of retendering is that the incumbents lose out. But what's really important, in my view, is that they're treated fairly, and that they are given as much support and assistance as they possibly can be. And it did strike me that when reading something about them being thrown out, pretty very quickly without any recourse, particularly those that have been involved for 40 years or more, we need to do more for them if we possibly can. And that will involve discussions potentially with the successful candidates, and that is something that I think is an obligation on the corporation, given the fact that they have provided good service for so many years, which they have done. And we've all used them. We've used them for lunches. We've used them for after our walks, and they're good people. I don't think there's any doubt about that. The third thing I just want to mention is about the public relations. I don't know how many times. I mean, I've been involved, like Colin and Michael, ever since this consultative committee started. And the one thing that continually lets the corporation down on big issues is communications and public relations. And what Gregory Jones has come out with now should have been brought out right at the outset, in my view, because without that, then inevitably there was a gap, and that gap has enabled misunderstandings, miscommunications, and all sorts of problems to have arisen as a consequence of this. And once you've got a ball rolling in respect to petitions and things like this, it's very difficult to stop that. So my concern is that what the corporations come up with is actually really too late.
Fair enough. Now, 3 points there. I think, as you say, in a sense, it's a comment. I probably agree with you that one of the problems with the Christmas New Year period was that things were let drift rather than being addressed up front, because people went around to deal with them. Quite apart from, it is fair to say that the sorting out the heads and terms and the discussions that have been happening have been delayed because of the Christmas holiday period. The various people aren't around to do it, and therefore things haven't progressed as quickly as you might hope. But Bill, in terms of the discussions and the current approaches, can you able to comment on that? And there was a specific query about the criteria in paragraph 25. Well, I'm not sure where that is. 85. Oh.
Yeah, Richard, thanks for the questions and for the comments. What I'm noting, I did look at paragraph 25, so thank you for the correction, is I think we know the Heath cafes get busy, right? They get very busy. And it's important that any operator is able to accommodate queues and work with those, and that was an important consideration.
Yeah, but that wasn't my point. My point was that it might, because they needed to demonstrate experience elsewhere. I didn't understand from this whether or not the current incumbents would have needed to have demonstrated experience elsewhere, or whether the experience of them on the Heath was sufficient. That's not clear in that paragraph, that's all.
Okay, there's no prejudice. It's simply stating we have an operator who's able to accommodate high volume locations.
And then in terms of dealing with the existing, I suppose the transition might be, as I understand discussions have been held with those who are happy to discuss it. I I suppose I can probably tell tales out of skills. My understanding is one of the operators is not talking to anyone. And therefore, how can you actually deal with the transition if they're not talking? I mean, it's just not a sensible way forward to dig your heels in. That, I'm afraid, is the impression that comes across, whereas the other two are talking. So one thing I know has been in the press is that staff, for instance, at Parliament Hill will continue to be engaged where they want to be. I mean, that is because of the result of discussion. But because of, unsurprisingly, this is an ongoing situation. It's the impression, I suppose, it's important. I suppose the question then, the more general question is the inclusion of discussing with the current operators and their staff part of what you're looking at?
You're right. The current operator is very much committed to trying to make a smooth transition as much as possible. They've stated, they're interested in keeping on existing staff. They've talked about, some of the terms of employment, and they're very eager to engage with existing operators. We would encourage that. We would facilitate that and make introduction if and as needed. But we really would think that that's important because we want to support all parties involved, to your point, Richard, and make this as smooth and seamless as possible. We understand that it is a change, and change, takes a lot of coordination and a lot of communication, and we're encouraging that.
Okay. Can I just go back in terms of
Sorry, this gentleman here who's in charge of who runs the Lido Cafe said that actually the City of London hasn't contacted. It's been Prue from Daisy Green who's contacted about the transition. Is that right?
As I mentioned, they've been in touch. We're happy to communicate.
Why haven't you been in touch?
We have been in touch, Michelle. We provided notification.
Were you in touch prior to this decision after this decision was made? Or did you leave that to Daisy Green?
If I may, so to be really clear, there is a challenge that we are working through at the moment. We cannot discuss that here. It is illegal and it's legally privileged, so we cannot get into the detail of that challenge here. What we can do is assure that we have been compliant with our obligations as an authority.
Just to following up on that, obviously we'd have to take legal advice on it, but as my understanding was, very clearly, Bill made sure he spoke to each of the people before it even went public, so that the current operators knew what was going to be coming, but apart from in July knowing that the process was coming. So the other problem we've got is I'm aware of legal letters from Hoxton Beach. I'm sorry, I'm going to name them. We are in potential legal proceedings with them. We can't discuss it at our committee because, unsurprisingly, they're the ones most upset about what's happened.
I didn't know that. I'm just passing.
Yeah,
I do think that that's actually fair to raise that here.
No, I didn't say you shouldn't ask the question. It's just the context is obviously important, and quite apart from that, I always slightly have one hand tied behind my back because there are things that isn't appropriate to discuss in public session. Quite apart from not fair to other competing bidders. But I'm conscious, I think we all are, of how much controversy this has caused publicly. So I'm hoping we can have a reasonable discussion. Now, I know you may have a question of your own separately, Michelle. I'm happy to come back to that. But you had a question this end? Right. Okay, fine, thank you. In which case, do you want to ask questions for yourself?
Yeah, I'm just want to double check. Was anyone on this committee, any representative from this committee, involved in assessing the tenders at any stage?
So, no, that was done by officers.
I mean, why not? Why didn't we at least have some oversight of the last three, for example?
The consultative committee was consulted, as you will recall, at the last meeting. These things are done by officers. This is a consultative body, to be sure, but not a decision-making body, and that is the work of officers. We proceed at the direction of the management committee, and we proceeded as instructed.
Okay, my response to that is that, as with other things, for example, the grant model, the change to the grant model, a lot of people on this committee don't feel they are consulted. We feel what happens is we give an update and we get deferred information. We'll be told we'll be given information down the line. And then there's the decision's been made. I mean, the Consultative Committee is embodied in the deeds of how this is set up with the City of London. We are meant to advise you. And of course, we don't take ultimate decisions. But we weren't consulted on this. And there are a lot of people on this committee who feel very marginalised and angry about how this has happened. And it's sort of, I mean, you said just now it was discussed with the committee. I would be really interested to know how many people on this committee feel they really had a proper oversight of what happened with this tender. Personally, I think that this should be paused. And I think there should be more consultation with us. We represent the communities. That's exactly why we are here. And you can see by the response that there's a lot of unhappiness about this. Now, would you think about pausing it and going back and reconsidering?
If I may. Sure.
Yeah, please.
So to be clear, we have engaged the committee in terms of the process, in terms of setting the outcomes that we've tried to achieve through this process. It would not be typical for us to then engage members in the actual delivery of that procurement. That's not a normal practice. So we will work with you in terms of what we're trying to achieve, and then we take that away, and the procurement then delivers that. That's why officers are then given that task. That's exactly why officers are employed by this organization, because of their professional expertise and because they are then enabled with that strategic direction to then undertake those decisions. I'm accountable, my officers are accountable for those decisions. And we believe and we know that this process was undertaken. There's a lot of work undertaken to ensure that the process was done in the correct way. Now, we understand that there will be members of this committee that will not be happy with the outcome of that, and we are accountable for that. And we understand that there has been a lot of noise around the process, but we stand by the fact that this was done in the correct way. We will obviously handle challenges through the channels that have been set up, and we obviously are responding to a challenge currently, which again, we cannot discuss the detail of here, but that's the way in which we consult. We have engaged the committee. We may not come to you and we may not give you the answers that you are looking for, but we cannot guarantee that. We can guarantee that we will engage you, and that's exactly what the team have done.
Okay, I don't think we've been engaged, and a lot of people here don't think we've been engaged. So I understand. I mean, I'm not saying it would be typical to get us involved, but please don't just come to us with updates and then a decision and say you've consulted us, because you haven't. And I said to you last time that this was going to come back to bite you, and it is. I mean, I'm sure it will be fine, and you'll get the result you want, and you'll make lots of money from this. But it's not
really fair to say the money that's made from this goes straight into the Heath. You completely forget.
I know, but there are concerns about that, and there are concerns about.
Yes, I know. It's important. It comes back to the perception of what is the role of someone who runs the Heath, what is the Consultation Committee, and what is the public's role. And the idea that the procurement process is for some referendum process, I don't think anyone's suggesting that. And yet somehow the response needs to be whatever decision we had made, unless it was your friend who got the contract, there would be an objection. I mean, that's some of the perception that was come across. It's like, if the professional process is done and has been suggested by any local authority properly, then there has to be a fairness across the piece. And as soon as the process, and it was said at the beginning, was to be a competitive bidding process, then this is the structure that one follows. I mean, that's what we can consult on in terms of the structure. But I suppose what was ultimately saying that you have to trust the advice that's then given on the process, and the decision that has to be made by the appropriate decision maker. I mean, it is of course uncomfortable. Anyone likes the dispute that's arisen, but it is part of the process. Now, I'm conscious there may be other hands raised, or maybe as much as can be said on this at this stage. And I'm conscious this, as I say, is something that one needs to have a good hard look at, and was aware of the controversy that has been generated. Michael Hammerson, you do have a hand up?
Yes, it's perhaps I could just offer a few thoughts rather than anything else on this. My long-serving colleague, Mr. Sumray, I think has articulated very clearly what I would guess are the thoughts of most of the committee on this. We have, as he indicated, we have for many years urged the importance of the city liaising with us, the Consultative Committee, on issues, particularly where PR and public consultation are concerned. I think a particular issue here is at paragraph 82 on page 37. It makes clear each cafe was marketed as an individual opportunity, which I think probably encouraged the wider community who used it to believe that maybe some of the incumbents would be reappointed, or at least that there would be a range of individual operators appointed. So the fact that they have all been granted to one operator, rightly or wrongly, and maybe they will prove to be excellent operators for all we know, but nevertheless it does reinforce, I think, in the public eye, the fact, the concern that a chain has once more been appointed to operate them all. It may or may not be the right decision, but that is what the perception of the public is going to be. And in response to Michelle's question, the information that the decision was made by officers rather than any member of the management committee does, I think, serve rather to underscore this. And I think one of our concerns is that when things of public interest are handled like this, the outcome undermines the fantastic work that the Heath team actually does on the Heath, in terms of the public perception of the city. And I think this is perhaps one of the more unfortunate things, because I don't think we can fault the city team in any way on the excellent way in which they run the Heath. Something like this does have a negative impact on the public image of the Heath. I hope that makes a little bit of sense with rather rambling thoughts on it, but I hope there's a point there which can be taken into account.
Okay. Thank you, Michael. Not sure there's anything further to say. I would just correct you in terms of, it's not to say that officers decided, it was their recommendation that then got considered by committee. So if you've misunderstood that, can I happily correct that it's still the management committee's decision. But all the hard work in terms of assessing the 30 bids, yes, is the officers plus the outside experts review that led to the recommendation. To say that, don't let that hag run. Don't think there's anything else potentially to say. I'm not seeing any other hands at the moment. Oh, sorry. Yes.
Can I just ask, who were the outside experts?
This is the marketing agent, Davis Coffer Lyons. Davis Coffer Lyons. They specialize in food and beverage.
Now, I'm conscious you weren't here at the last committee meeting, but there was a report that went to the Consultation Committee about, I suppose, in an anonymised way, but saying that retail expertise was sought in to put the bidding process together and the criteria, and then the initial scoring and review is partly our officers, including the surveyors department, who understand commercial leases, and the outside expertise of the retail expert. Is that a fair summary? Yeah. So it was that input that then led to the recommendation. In which case, I know it's an issue that will continue to run, but I'll hopefully be able to address a lot of the points. Can I then turn to the events update? Obviously, there's a summary of some of the events that have happened, and some that are on their way. Bill, any particular update?
I think it's laid out here, Chairman. I'm happy to answer any questions. I would just note that we are in discussions about bringing back the International London Cross Country, which was very popular when it occurred last time, which for some reason is escaping my memory. I think it might have been 2 years ago. Yeah.
Can I also just check? In the sports forum minutes, they mentioned the 9th to 10,000K might be happening in May. In your report, there's no sort of specific mention. What do we know so far about it?
I will ask Susanna to come in, who oversees, among many other things, events.
Yeah, so we're in regular contact with Ben, the organizer. It's the 26th of May, I think the specific date they're working towards, but he's still working with his sponsors and his partners to see whether he will be going ahead with it. We're ready, and we'll obviously, in terms of preparation, want to make that decision as well, for him to make that decision as soon as possible so we can have that in place. But yeah, keep following up with him.
We hope, but we still don't know for sure. Is that right? Thank you. Anything else on events? Otherwise, can I say thank you for the report and thank you for the discussion as well. The next item is Heath Hands. I'm conscious we have Heath Hands representative in the room, but the report's in the name of Bill Sasso, a sort of bit of a joint report in that sense. But how would you like to present this?
Thank you, Chair. There's our report is at page 43 and 44. I'll take it as read in the interests of time. But there are just a couple of, and very happy to pick up any questions members have. There were just a couple of points I just wanted to pull through. Firstly, there's mentions in this report about the Heath Information Hut. And I just, well, two things really. The interest that it's generated has really exceeded our expectations. In fact, Charlotte and I passed by on Saturday, and it really has become, I think, a bit of a shop window, certainly for Heath Hands, but I think more widely for the Heath, around the public engagement and dealing with questions. It's generated quite a bit of interest in volunteering sessions. So we're absolutely delighted with that. And we'd just like to formally thank the city for the work that they carried out to the hut, because it really has allowed us to open it up and I think make very good use of what was probably not a great investment. I think it's valuable. Just one other point I'd like to make. We had a volunteer survey at the end of last year across Heath Hands, and we've been doing this for a number of years now, and we had our best ever response, and it was very supportive of the work that goes on, as supportive as it has always been, but also some really good feedback in terms of what we can do better, improve upon, to make the volunteering experience even better than it is at the moment. So that was a very good piece of work. So those were just the two items I wanted to pull through, but very happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. I think the information hub, is that going to continue monthly basis, or is it just take a pause? Or
so the intention is to have it open at weekends. But I think we will have a short period during the sort of depths of winter when it won't be open. But I mean, it was interesting on Saturday, for example, which was a very cold day. But I mean, I think we picked up 7 impromptu volunteers for a session that was carried out on Saturday, and a lot of litter was picked as a result. So I think we will respond to the amount of demand that comes through it, but it probably won't be open every Saturday during the deep part of the winter.
Yeah, Bill, is there anything further on that? Yeah.
I just didn't want to miss an opportunity. The information hub has been an extraordinary introduction on the Heath for I don't know, 10 square meters or whatever it is. It really is punched above its weight. It's been really popular. It's been a chance for Heath Hands to get their mission out there, to engage with the public, to bring people into caring and helping us take care of the Heath. And really has been important to give people information. Where are the loos? How do I get to the pond? I'm looking for the zoo. Where is it? And it's a 40-minute walk that way. But it's been extraordinarily helpful in the absence of a visitor center on the Heath. So just thank you to Heath Hands and all of their volunteers for making it a reality. This was really their vision that they brought to us, and we were really thrilled to be able to work with them on it.
Yeah, I'm glad to hear it. Thank you. Unless there's anything else, I suppose, apart from recording our thanks for all the work, the volunteers, perhaps we can leave the report there. And obviously, it's a useful summary of all that's going on. In which case, we come up to a couple of verbal updates. The Heath Ponds access consultation. Andrew MP was slated to give us an update on where we are. People may recall we've had a couple of verbal updates before, because inevitably this is a long, drawn-out process. So, Andrew, please do tell us where matters have got to.
Thank you, Deputy Chair. So just as an aid memoir, the public consultation closed on the 25th of November. We had just under 40,000 responses, so it won't be any surprise that it took a long time to analyse all of those responses. It took until the end of the year to analyse those. We started the year with a draft report on the consultation. We now have a final report in the last few days. We've received a final report, plus a report of the various focus groups. That report now needs to go through various meetings internally and various committees, and it needs to go in a specific order. The timing of tonight's meeting unfortunately didn't fit into that timeline, and that's why we need to do a save the date in the diary for an extraordinary meeting to discuss the access arrangements at the ponds, and the date that we have at the minute is the 10th of February. We have a meeting tomorrow internally to ascertain whether we will require a second extraordinary meeting, and we will let you know the outcome of that as soon as possible. But the report is coming, and your committee is actually the first committee that will receive that report. So you'll have opportunity there to ask questions and to discuss the outcome of that consultation. So that's where we are at the minute, Deputy Chair.
Just to be very clear, the idea of 10th of February is limited to reporting on the consultation. It's not seeking to do more than that, or are you seeking to just have people discuss the whole decision, or how does it fit in?
No, it's not really an opportunity to discuss a decision. The rationale is that you will see the report, and then it's an opportunity to clarify things, to ask any questions, to maybe make comments. But really, this is a very contentious issue. You don't need me to tell you that. It's been going on for quite some time. It's very complex. So the results of that consultation, we feel it needs time to land with committee members, to get them to understand it, to get them to engage with it. And then there will be a further meeting where the decision making will be discussed. But that will not be the premise of that initial meeting. It's merely to see the data and to ask any questions of clarification.
Right, I wonder if there might be some hands in the room. Shall I don't know, both people, should we turn to the table to start? But
you go first.
A rather specific question, thank you. I was rather surprised to see 40,000 replies to this. We as members of the Consultative Committee really look after the communities on the Heath. And I'm not sure there are 40,000 people on the Heath who replied. And I'm a little concerned that the replies might reflect a population other than the one we represent and other than the one that uses the Heath. So I'd like a bit of clarity. Perhaps that was clear in analyzing those replies, but it seems to me, as we've just been discussing in other contexts, the community of people who use the Heath is our responsibility to represent here. And who are these 40,000 besides the few thousand that are tens of thousands who use the Heath? And what were they saying that this study should pay attention to?
So yeah, it's a good question. Thank you. Yes, we anticipated that we would get way more than a few thousand. We had probably anticipated we'd get way more than 40,000. I was quite surprised we only got 40. We were probably expecting near 100,000. We knew there was the potential for it to get hijacked from people not just across the UK, but maybe across the globe. So there are the consultation was run in a way that we can control for where those responses are coming from to an extent. But the whole idea of having focus groups was so that we could make sure that we had focus groups that were people who were from the swimming community, and we could guarantee that those people that attended the focus groups were speaking on behalf of the swimming group. But also in the people of those 40,000 people, they could fill it in either on behalf of an organisation, or they could state where they were from, where they lived, whether they were swimming members, what they were. So there is a way of being able to analyse those 40,000 so we can actually put those into categories, and the report will report against those things, against 40,000, against a subset. So we will be able to do that, because yes, of course, there will be some within those 40,000 that probably don't even know where Hampstead Heath is. And that's the reality of a public consultation.
That's great. Thank you.
Now there are other hands up in the room. Again, we seem to have lost our particular order, but if Richard Summery is happy to go, and then Colin.
It's only a quick question. I wasn't clear from what you were saying, Andrew, about whether or not this committee is actually being consulted on the results. I appreciate the first meeting is about asking questions and getting clarification. Is the intention of a second meeting to consult us about our views? Because that's what we're here for.
Yeah, I mean, we will get clarity on that tomorrow when we have the meeting about the second stage. So I don't want to preempt that now unless Katie wants to answer that. But I think, of course, you're right. We consult on that. So I would imagine that the process that we did is that we would consult on the decision that we're thinking of making. But I'll let Katie answer for that for definite.
Yeah, happy to come in on that. So, and exactly why we're having the meeting tomorrow is just to get some legal advice in terms of exactly what we need to, because we do need to be very, very careful that we're doing this in the right way. But we will come back, and obviously the intention is to engage the Consultative Committee. So.
Thank you. Colin Gregory.
Thank you, Chairman. I think Executive Director Katie's actually answered the point that the main point I was going to make, but to reinforce what's just been said, that I hope that when officers have formulated an outcome, having heard the consultations, taking account of legal advice and so on, that we have an opportunity to comment on that before it's finalised. Now, I think the point I wanted to make was a sort of expansion on that, because there are many strands to this. The consultation is just a part of it, and it will be helpful to hear what people said. It's certainly true, of course, to say that people who don't currently swim, but might, depending on what the approach is to access, are relevant consultees. But the other strands are the city's own policies in relation to equalities more broadly, the law, which is fairly clear following the Supreme Court decision, but obviously in detailed cases there's plenty of scope for argument, and the guidance from the Equalities and Human Rights Commission, which is currently with the government. I don't know if Kate is able to say anything about what the sort of timing is on these various strands, but in particular from the corporation's perspective on how this fits in with the sort of broader equalities responsibilities of the corporation. Thanks, Chair.
So thank you, Chair. And thank you for the question. So as you say, to be really clear, the consultation is one element. And again, as we said earlier, it's certainly not a referendum. We have to be very clear that there are other factors that we do need to take into account. So in terms of the various strands you've mentioned, the gender identity policy for the corporation, as you know, is being reviewed. The legal advice that we have received is that although it is important that that is being done, it won't necessarily have the detail that would impact on what we are considering here in terms of options. So it shouldn't stop us from continuing the process. So we will continue that. And I think that's one of the things that we'll be seeking to clarify in terms of the timetable that we set out. In terms of the EHRC guidance that we're awaiting, again, we're I think we know about as much as you do in terms of when that is expected. But obviously, again, as and when that becomes available, if that does have implications, then obviously we will take that into account. And we are just trying to seek some clarity in terms of when that's coming. I don't know, Lisa, if you have anything further to add, or Andrew, on that particular point, because I think I've probably said as much as we know about that. But if there is anything further to add, please do jump in. Okay, no, that's, yeah.
Thank you. Any other queries? Obviously, it's taking a little bit longer than we might hope. I suppose one thing I'm conscious of, though, people probably remember there was a court hearing before Christmas. We still don't have the result or any indication when the judge is going to say whether permission should be given for the claim, because it wasn't even the main hearing. It was the preliminary stage about whether the case is arguable and should continue to a main hearing. So that remains a question mark. But I think it's fair to say the decision that we need to make can't wait for that. I think it's that, yeah.
I think that's been the very clear legal advice. So what we're trying to do is really balance the need to obviously take into account all the necessary considerations, but also move at the necessary pace, which, as you say, is a matter which is slightly separate. So I think we're trying to get that balance at the moment. And as you say, we've been very much given the advice to proceed at pace, and we will continue to do that as much as we can.
Yes.
Sorry, Chair. I thought we were told by Secretary Jones at the last meeting it was a rolled up hearing where it was both permission and substantive, but was that not the case in the end? Thank you, Chair.
Yes, you're quite right in terms of that expression is used. It was a slightly odd use of the word rolled up, because strictly speaking, you apply on paper for an application to go ahead. And then if you lose on paper, you have a hearing about whether you should be allowed to apply. That bit was what was rolled up. So there wasn't a sort of paper stage. It was still for all in one go in the hearing, and therefore extensive argument about whether permission should be given. So it still wasn't the main hearing. But yes, obviously it's very much as we can. There may be things said inevitably in the judgment that may change what we need to do. So all we can do is proceed on plan A and see how things go. But yeah, you're right that the phrase about December's hearing was slightly ambiguous.
What time on the 10th is the proposed meeting?
Do you have an idea yet?
I don't know, Andrew. Do we have a time for that yet?
I refer to town clerks probably, because they were the ones that were organising it. Apologies for Teflon to you, Zoe.
There is this reference to that meeting on the 10th. So yeah, we weren't able to progress with organising it yet until we've decided the process with Environment and City Solicitors. But as soon as we can progress forward with that and sending out invitations, we will.
Obviously, there's the ability to do things online as well as being in person. So hopefully that will help. But it sounds like, I'm afraid, we're going to have to get back to you about the specifics, and we aren't quite there yet. Is that right? Yeah.
We will do so as soon as possible, and apologies for any delay. We will certainly come back as soon as possible after tomorrow's meeting, and try to get that in your diaries as soon as.
Seem very important to have that meeting, but it's necessary. Anything else on this? I think we probably as far as we can take it for now. Thank you. In which case, can I turn to the next item on our agenda, which is about the budget? Again, a verbal update because of the timing. Now, we slightly touched on this earlier in the meeting because of the minutes and what had been discussed. Perhaps would they be useful to have a confirmation about process on the budget, about how we go forward with it and how it fits in with the meetings? Yeah.
Is Marguerite? No, she's not on the call. So just bear with me a second, and I will go through an update for you. So obviously, I did outline the general process previously. Given the preference not to provide Hampstead Heath Consultative Committee with a report containing figures that hadn't been discussed by Finance Committee, we obviously had Finance Committee today, and I summarised to members earlier that that there was an in principle approval of the rebaseline kind of budget request. So what we are going to be doing is incorporating those figures into the budget paper, which will go back to Hampstead Heath, Highgate Wood and Queen's Park Committee, indicating that that they are subject to final approval by Finance Committee, and that there will be the need to produce detailed business cases for those, but asking for the main committee to approve the paper on that basis. So we are going to be, the Chamberlain's team will be doing that over the next few days, and will be circulating that finalised report for the main committee to Hampstead Heath Consultative Committee members at the same time, so that everybody has the up-to-date information. Thank you.
We obviously had a brief discussion earlier. Is there anything else on the budget? Yes, Mr. Gregory?
Thank you, Chair. I think it would just be helpful to have an assurance that, I mean, we were circulated with a list of the points that were made in non-public sessions, our last meeting, which were considered by the management committee at its main committee, and Richard has reiterated a number of the things that we have been saying about the need to think about the baseline, not just in terms of the constabulary, but we've raised other issues about visitor numbers and climate change and the like, which are obviously going to affect the ability of the pressures on the local risk budget going forward. So I'd just like an assurance that that will all be taken into account in the rebaselining, or whatever the word that's being used is. Thank you, Chair.
I'm happy to add to that. So we have been kind of working through, a robust process in the time that we've had available, which is obviously quite a short timeline. And we've been given a very clear kind of steer by Chamberlain's that, there is this wider context of very, challenging kind of budget pressures, both on City Fund, which funds the local authority side of things, but also on cities estate as well. So therefore, we do need to make a very clear business case based on really health and safety risk and also kind of statutory requirements. So we have we've been working very closely with Chamberlain's, and the superintendents have, to really kind of make sure that we have a full list of all of the additional work that we believe is required in order to deliver operations kind of safely, effectively and compliantly. I mean, clearly there are other items that would be desirable, and we are capturing those items, but those won't form part of the rebaseline budget request, but they will be captured kind of within our income generation plans and our business plans going forward, should we be able to secure funding for that additional work. But we are going through a very robust process of trying to capture everything that needs to be done, rationalising that against the kind of organisational backdrop of the financial pressures, and asking for realistic rebaselined budget. But that does include additional staffing where we believe that there is a significant understaffing at the moment. So constabulary has been identified as one of those areas, but also some funding that will help to address kind of in a one-off kind of way some issues, for example making sure that the vehicle fleet is up to standard and necessary, but also looking at things like including reserves for each of the charities as well. So it will be divided into two kind of sections. So one is the ongoing year-on-year costs in terms of additional staffing, and then kind of another ask, which is a one-off ask in terms of things like creating the reserves policy, addressing any kind of current gaps in infrastructural fleet, etc. Katie, is there anything that you wanted to add to that?
No, I think just to say the points that you've just raised, we absolutely made in the context of the conversation today. So the committee the finance committee were made aware of the challenges that particularly this committee have raised, and it was quite helpful, I think, in terms of getting at least that buy-in to the next stages of the process.
Thank you. I am a little concerned about an aspect of that. So health and safety and risks to the public are dealt with to some extent by the points about the constabulary and visitor numbers. But there's a whole range of issues which are really to do with the safety and future security of the Heath itself. The effects on the environment caused by numbers of people, climate change, threats from pests and tree disease and so forth, which are going to put increasing pressure on the staff. And if they've been sort of excluded from future planning, then our concerns that the baseline which we are working on from the current situation are not going to be sufficient to enable the Heath to be properly protected itself going forward. That would be a matter of concern.
Can I just come back on that and say that certainly is a factor that has been considered and is covered, I feel, through things like countryside stewardship funding, but also, our statutory conservation designations. We do have, a legal requirement to actually maintain the sites in, good condition, and so that's a factor that has been considered in this process.
Anything else on the budget? Otherwise, thank you for the update. That takes us to the meaty topic of the 5-year business plan. Bill, this is in your name. We have it on page 45 of our bundle. As I understand it, and Bill obviously can correct me, this is obviously a more detailed iteration, but it is very much, this is the stage at which we are consulting your committee, and it would in theory then go forward to the main committee to be in place for the coming year, to be reviewed in a year, but it is meant to be covering the 5-year period. So with that sort of broad introduction, I suppose, as to what the role of this paper is before us, Bill, is there anything particularly you wanted to pick up?
Just briefly, Chairman, in the interest of time. One, I did my best to print the business plan bigger this year. That was a request last year. I hope that was a step towards legibility. It took a little bit of struggling with Microsoft Excel, but we got there.
Can I formally record my thanks for that?
Yes. Feedback noted. You will see that a lot of the work in here is reviewing things that are happening or thinking about things that need to happen. And this is, I think, a reflection of perhaps what's always happened on the Heath. Footfall is up. The world is changing in many ways because of the events of the last 3, 5, 7 years. There's a tremendous backlog of work that needs to be done. So you will see a fair amount of work that's in here as officers reviewing existing work or policies or procedures and making sure our approach to the management of the Heath is still fit for purpose and reflective of best practice. So just to contextualize a little bit, in addition to this business plan will continue to evolve over the next several years. It's a new way of working for the corporation. I do think it's a good thing. It's allowing us to think longer term, and it will especially evolve, I would say, in the next year, 18 months, 24 months, as the charity review and the grant funding model come into place. We will be able to think more long term and have more predictability of what at least our guaranteed funding streams will look like. So look for further evolution. This current plan still looks 2 years into the future with some longer term projects, but it will continue to be built upon and will evolve. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Yes, going down the table, which is the summary.
Yes, I have a number of points. One major omission, in my view, is the development of a new strategy, because the last strategy was 2018. It's been reviewed since then, halfway through, but the new strategy should be designed for around about 2028, 29, given the review was a bit late. So I do think it absolutely needs to be put into there, and I think there are a number of reasons for that. Not least, I mean, it was a 10-year strategy, and that's how long it's due to last. But as I mentioned to a couple of people on Saturday, I think this issue about footfall of the Heath is a hugely important one, because it has changed fundamentally over the last few years. And whereas in 2018, we were looking at how we could increase it, how we could get people who weren't coming onto the Heath groups, that weren't using it, how we could get them. I think we have almost an opposite situation now of potential overuse of the Heath. And one of the things I think we need to look at is what is a balance of usage? How do we create that if we can? And I think, therefore, it's a really difficult topic. I don't underestimate it, but it's something that I think we absolutely need to consider, and I think should be a part of that and part of the potential new strategy. Some other things that are in here that I think probably need to be described maybe slightly more fully. For example, the one about saunas and the future of them. There's a difference, for example, between having an additional sauna in the Lido, which I think is relatively straightforward, not a policy issue, from very significant policy issues about whether or not they'd be desired for the pond. I mean, I'm actually personally in favour of it, but because the model that Northern Europe has in relation to saunas, but obviously there's opposition to it as well. But an important issue for development, the future of the park run, I think, needs to be outlined in here. Wildfires is not just about staff; it's about usage by the public, and I think a number of us have stopped things happening on the Heath which were dangerous during times of drought. The pergola mentioned here about money from one source, but if it's going to work, it's going to have resources coming in from other sources as well. So I think that needs to be added too. I think there's in the event side of it, it's not just about looking at current events, but it's about future events and what the implications might be of that. Paddle, that's actually there's an application at Talacre. Do we want to add to that in respect of the Heath, or do we want to work with them? There is local opposition, it seems, there. But again, that needs to be understood. Unauthorised access to ponds, it talks about long-term issues, but actually there's some very short-term issues around that as well, which need to be addressed. And I had my last point, but I've already made that about the constabulary, so I won't make it again. But just filling out those. I'm sorry if I've been just rattling through them, but it's just I think the description needs in some cases to be improved and built on.
Thank you. Just getting down the table, yes, Professor Wag.
Thanks. I have a very general question, and it sort of comes from this side of the table, where a lot of the organizations over here are already and probably in future going to be more useful in helping the city find external funding. We've been very happy to have a chance to contribute to the fundraising study and all. And I have a question from that perspective. I just want to understand. So if an activity is marked for a particular year against the risk budget, my understanding is then that activity will be delivered by the staff and resources in the risk budget, funded by the risk budget. If an activity is identified under a multiple or external budget, and there are only 5 of the 78 here which are that categorized in that way, which surprised me a bit, but anyway, of those 5, then in a particular year, when that is taken up, what does that mean? That is to say, that project can't happen until there's external funding. So is the risk budget going to be involved in that in any way? That is, it would seem to me that staff would have to be talking to external funders and so on. That takes up time. So there's an element of risk budget in that. I just wanted to understand what does it mean about that it's in a black and 2026 about an externally funded project.
Probably worth picking up, necessarily add back Richard Summary's points. Do you want to pick up both?
All noted and helpful, thank you.
Yeah. And then there's explanation about how the tables and charts are being put together.
Yeah, I think part of this, Jeff, is it's evolving in as a communication tool, in a management tool. There's only so much you can do in a spreadsheet, sadly, but it's a good question that we've talked about. How do we communicate that, and then how does it work functionally? So just some things we were thinking about is say in 2028, we're hoping to find external funding to fix something at the track, or we're hoping to fix a playground with external funding. You don't just show up 3 years from now and start looking for it. You need to do it in advance. And do we show that as an ongoing piece of work for the entire lead up? I think there's some assumption in there that the external funding that is not yet identified is something that will be part of the lead up, and the work will kind of have a longer runway, if you will. And I think we can think about how we represent that. I think it's a good note, actually. I think Susanna's initial paper and the work that she's doing will help inform this and evolve as well, as she helps us prioritize and think about what in here, or what that we want to put in here, is actually potentially fundable. You know, we're not going to be able to fund core operations externally. I think we all know that, and we're operating on that, not as an assumption, but as a given. But it will continue to be refined in that way. I'm not entirely sure that I'm answering your question. If I'm not, please.
I think you are. It just occurred to me that the process of generating external funding will require staff time. So it is going to be a call on the risk budget as well.
Oh, yes.
And presumably the fact that you want something in 2 years, you're going to have it's marked for this year. That means that's not the external funding. That's the effort put in from the risk budget to get that. So I just thought that's something that's rather important.
It is. Yeah,
sorry.
A little procedural point.
Yeah, thank you. Sorry to interrupt members. In accordance with Standing Order 39, can I just confirm that members are okay to extend the meeting? Thank you.
No, it's fine, and I think it's a very good point. There are often times in here as well, and there's, we want to kind of simplify it for consumption, where things will be funded by more than one source. The playground at Coldersville Park is a good example, where the corporation is paying for half of it out of local risk, and half of it is very generously being supported by the London Borough of Barnet. We're just trying to make it intelligible, but we need to think through it and continue to refine it.
Thank you. Yes, again, is it Colin Gregory?
Thank you, Chair. Well, I think this has been a very useful discussion so far with Richard and Jeff's points. I mean, and I hope the officers have found this useful, because what matters is how this is actually used in practice. And, we might groan when we look at the sort of tables, and at least it's legible this time. But I'd just like to ask a bit about how it is being used in practice, following on perhaps from last year. So last year, a whole range of strategy and policy documents were sort of being considered by the corporation, the Natural Environment Department and above. And I do note that this one does have city corporation plan outcomes as one of the things that are sort of ticked in it. I just wonder how, after a year's dealing with this, after it's settled down a bit, you felt it is actually helping prioritize, decide where to go for things and what to fund, what to seek funding for, etc. It's still a little difficult to understand in terms of its priorities. So the first category of things are to do with we protect and conserve the Heath. There are some really important things like flood mitigation and wildfires and so on. But the first one is actually sheep on the Heath, which perhaps is not quite of the same order. So it's a little difficult to know how to read this. And I think I made the point last year how this is used to prioritize things. So can I ask a bit about how this is working in practice, how it fits in with other city planning documents? Thanks, Chair.
Of course, Colin, and it's a good question, and please rest assured we're asking and hopefully answering the same question on this side of the table. Our intention, our goal, what we want is that this is going to be something we rely upon over time to capture the bulk of what we're doing on the work. Now, a lot of it is cutting grass, picking litter, cleaning loos. That's not captured in here. These are new work streams or projects or one-off initiatives that then become business as usual. We are using this as a reporting document internally where I meet with Charlotte and Jonathan and Susanna, and we talk about, now let's go through. This year we had, I'll make it up, 45 actions that we thought we were going to do. Are we on target? Are we getting this done? Does this need to be extended? Did we actually get it done earlier than hopes? Did we overcommit, which was the case this year? We had planned to bring a mid-year report, essentially adding a couple more columns to this report and showing you where we were. It was a very busy year, as you know, and we just didn't get there. We will bring one at the end of the fiscal year where we're able to show last year's report. Now, last year's report has been refined into this draft. How we translate those changes into this is something we're still working out, but it is intended to continue to be increasingly, well, I mean, that's the whole purpose of it, but a really firm management tool. But I mentioned this last year, I won't belabor it, but it's an important communication tool. We are stretched beyond capacity already. So the challenge that I gave to my team was, don't overcommit. Put down what you reasonably can do in a hardworking week, you know, with the commitment and the expertise and the skills that our team has. But don't do more than that and don't do less than that. And I think we've done our best. There will be things at the end of this coming year where we say we just didn't get there. Something cropped up, consultations and all these things that happen. And on the Heath, it turns out it's a reactive place, as you may know. But we're doing our best to guide our work. You asked about the strategies. Now, we've reported how we're reporting against the corporation and the natural environment strategies, which is easily enough to do. It is a strategy-rich organization, as you know that. But as you can see, the way this is structured, it is intended to essentially be a delivery vehicle for the strategy, the Heath strategy, and that is true of the other open spaces as well. This is not meant to be a list that we just talk about once a year and we say these are the things we'd want to do and we never come back and revisit. We're actively using it and we're meeting regularly with our team to go through and say, where are we at? What needs to get pushed? What is done? What did we forget? What should we think about next year? I hope that's responsive.
Thank you, Chair. Yes.
Thank you. Any other queries on the document? In which case, happy to leave it there. And obviously, there was a list of things that we added, but yes, I hope our number one priority is not sheep on the Heath, but there we go.
I did not answer priorities. It is a list. It is not prioritized. We will give some further thought to that. I do remember the conversation with multiple members last year.
No, thank you. And thank you for the report. That then takes us to item number 9, senior officers recruitment. This is obviously a fairly detailed report, but hopefully people picked up this is as a consequence of needing to find a replacement for Andrew Impey, regrettable as it is. However, it may feel quite a familiar report to people who saw a similar one on when he was being appointed. So I suppose, Emily, do you just want to just briefly introduce us and how this fits in?
Yes, thank you, Chair. So this is following the standard kind of report, the governance process that we have to go through in order to recruit any senior officer. So I've just outlined the process within this report. I do have a couple of updates which I'd like to share with you. So obviously we're very sad to see Andrew go and thank him very much for all of the great work that he's done over the time that he's been at the corporation. Andrew will be leaving at the end of this month, and recruiting a replacement is a member involved recruitment process given the seniority of his post. So just want to assure members of this committee that the process is that actually the chair, which is in this case the Natural Environment Board chair, is involved very closely with the interviews, but also in consultation with the other chairs of the other committees as well. So so that's the process that we're going through. We did advertise the position as an interim opportunity, but unfortunately we weren't successful in finding someone who had the right kind of skills and capabilities and experience to do that role on an interim basis. So what we've done since then is brought forward the recruitment appointment of a permanent replacement. And you may have seen that that job was advertised over Christmas, and I'm very happy to report that the application, the deadline for applications has just closed, and we actually got 160 applications. So I've been very busy kind of working through all of those, but we have had some really strong candidates within that field. So we will be carrying out interviews again, sort of involving the chair and relevant chairs of your committees in February for the permanent replacement. But I'm envisaging, given the kind of the usual period of notice for someone at that level, that we're probably looking at around May time in order to actually get someone in post. So what we've done is I've worked closely with Andrew and the superintendents to work out interim cover, and I will be taking on the line management of the head rangers, the head of learning, and the head of heritage and museums on an interim basis. I know them all very well. I work with them all regularly, so you know that, and they're all very capable individuals. So that will be a kind of light touch management support, but I'll make sure that I'm there both in person and at the end of the phone or at the end of Teams, you know, if needed, to support them throughout the gap period before we get a permanent replacement in place. We've also looked at all of the kind of key deliverables that Andrew was, you know, committed to delivering, and worked out between us who's going to be picking up on those on an interim basis. So we're confident that we've got a really good plan in place. The senior leadership team has been very supportive. They're all great staff, and yeah, we've got a plan that we think is deliverable. So that's where we are with the recruitment of the permanent replacement and also the interim arrangements. But happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Does anyone have any questions following that? All right. I suspect it was probably one of those reports that kind of went through on the having been read, rather than reflecting, of course, what it is exactly this post can do. But there we go. Thank you. Thank you for the update. In which case, very happy to move to item 10, the fundraising overview for Hampstead Heath and North London open spaces. And also to welcome, I think it's the name of Susanna Bear, this report. Hopefully most of you have got to know her across the last few months, but Susanna, do you want to just sort of centrally introduce this, and suppose any particular things you want to pick up or update?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, so this report, which I hope you had a chance to read, is a high-level update on plans and approach to fundraising for Hampstead Heath as a charity. At this early stage, with the charity review and the grant funding model still being re-baselined, as we've heard, there's still a lot of basics to do. So that's also the case for individual projects on Hampstead Heath, which is namely to understand and then articulate how much is needed, for what and why. Working with stakeholders is going to be really crucial to this and central to the success, and we've touched upon that a lot today. I think members of this committee, absolutely the people in this room, the groups you represent, and the wider community of visitors to the Heath, as well as the expert staff and volunteers and the trustees. And that will be in this room, but also, you know, many other meetings. So shaping bids, identifying donors, inviting support, measuring impact, building trust, and ultimately creating a legacy. So over the next 12 months, we'll be writing the strategy for voluntary income generation on the Heath, setting out the priorities, the principles, and the steps needed. And I just want to say we really want to take the time to do this well. I refer you to the charitable objects of Hampstead Heath, and this is an endeavour of preservation, of sustainability, of access and enjoyment, and that is what will guide us with our fundraising. But that doesn't mean that's all I'm going to be doing this year. As mentioned in the report, earned income, it was out of scope for this paper, but it's crucial. It's a third of Hampstead Heath's income. And across all this work, there's a range of tools and platforms and processes that we can start progressing on and get going, which underpin the fundraising effort and the stewardship effort. So things like a CRM database, online platforms, physical signage we've talked about, that's all part of the thinking. How we report income, how we process it, the bank accounts, that, you know, thank you letters, the policies. There's plenty to do, and we'll be getting on with all of that. And I'll also be doing some actual fundraising, I hope, which in short is basically looking at this business plan, looking at the projects, and then matching it with funds and donors and things we can go to. And I'll just add, sort of off the back of that most recent conversation, it's completely appropriate within applications and budgets, Jack will know this, to put in a contribution to core costs and to make sure that we are fully covering staff costs within a project budget. It would be unusual to see that. So that, I do hope that external income, whilst it won't be the focus, will absolutely contribute that. And I'm very cautious when I bring a new project potentially that maybe sits outside this, is it will impact business as usual. Projects become business as usual. So you'll see I've included a really simple form that I've started sharing and testing with staff, which is just getting everyone to think through that. What's the costs today? What's the outcomes today? And what's the impact? That's the sort of conversations that I'm having with staff, so that we can then start talking to funders about that across all streams of income.
Thank you.
So that's my introduction. Really welcome any comments or questions.
Yeah, fairly broad. A couple of questions in the room. I see Colin Gregory. Yeah.
Thank you, Chair. It was lovely to meet you at the weekend and in person. So I think it's been very helpful to have Susanna's input, and that the job that she's got covers not just fundraising, but these wider partnership issues, because the thing that this committee has been saying all along is how difficult fundraising is in this context and how critical this is going to be with the new funding model. So I think all I want to say at this stage is that everything that Susanna has said is all very encouraging, and really this is a plea to senior officers to give her the space to do this, because what we've been saying all along is that the context is critical, and that whatever someone from outside might think about fundraising opportunities in relation to the Heath, actually only after you've been working there for a while do you really understand what it's all about, who the local audience are, and what scope there is for doing this sort of thing. There's going to be huge pressure starting at the beginning of the next financial year to deliver things and to cope with the restrictions in finances, which are affecting the whole of the corporation, but also the Hampstead Heath department. So it's just really important that this continues as a sort of partnership between us, you, and the other people you're working with, to give Susanna the space to do this work. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. And Richard Summary.
Thanks for the report. I think it's cogent, comprehensive, so it's really helpful. 2 or 3 points from me. One is that I think it will inevitably lead to a discussion about the balance of earned income, and how that comes about. Years ago, we had these debates about how much there should be commercial income that's derived from the Heath and how much there shouldn't be, because of what the background to the Heath is. So I think that's going to need to be a discussion relatively early on, because what we don't want is to find that everything is earned income from commercial events on the Heath. So that is an area that is a bit complex, that has been discussed many times over the years, but not recently, interestingly enough, not really. Second point is I completely support what you said about contribution to core costs. I think some charities, if they don't take that into account, are missing something that's very important, because they think people want to give, but they want to give simply to the particular project that they're being asked to give for. But you're absolutely right. There are always core costs attached to it, and I think one needs to be clear about what percentage it is. I mean, it's 15% is the usual one, and I think, and I don't see any reason why that should not be adopted in that sort of in that sort of vein. The third thing is that I still believe firmly that it's going to be capital that's going to be the area where there's going to be most success. I can't see it easily happening in revenue at all, generally. I do think the pergola is probably the best example, as I think outlined in the papers here. And that would be a really good starting point, it seems to me, for a sort of major capital bid that would be coming through, because I think there we can potentially get some good contributors, and that might help change the way in which people think about the Heath, which otherwise I think has problems, and because of the relationship with the corporation.
Thank you. Seen Mike Hamson online?
Yes, thank you. I think probably expanding on what Colin Gregory said before, I think there's a need for a way of facilitating community liaison and feedback and use of local knowledge in this process. On page 97, it talks about meetings with stakeholders, but perhaps some thought needs to be given to coming up, producing something more formal to ensure local community participation and the use of their knowledge and contacts, which could save the city some work on its own part. I don't have any specific thoughts as to the structure of some arrangement like this, but I wonder whether some thought might be given perhaps to involving the chairs of local organisations, including those who are on this consultative committee, in some sort of organisation discussion group like that.
Do you want to respond?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think I would see a whole range of consultation actually when it comes to this. So whether it's sort of focus groups, meeting, more informal meetings, right through to WhatsApp groups and making sure you've got surveys, working with people who do audience. That's one of my biggest questions and one of the biggest questions of funders actually, even somebody like the National Lottery, they are very, very interested in audience and that side of things. They will fund stone and timber, but actually at the moment in particular, funders are very interested in audiences, consultation. Just to give you one example, we've got a bid that will go in next year for one of the other spaces, and the funder has said, make a video. She said, doesn't need any production value, but go and film your local residents telling you what they want from this. Really nice. So it's things like that. It is formal things, but it's actually also just using that kind of input as well.
Thank you. Yes, Professor Wright.
Thanks. Like my colleagues, I think this is a very welcome report, very nicely prepared and encouraging. I realized from your presentation just now that you will be responsible both looking at voluntary and commercial income. And I think, as Richard's pointed out, that's going to be an interesting balance. And I think it's really important that that both roles are balanced in a proper way, and that you get fundraising will take a lot of effort. And I can see that the short-term demands of generating commercial income could put pressure on that. And I hope that your role will be able to be maintained to do both strongly. Yeah,
absolutely.
And one very small point, reading through, at one point you get into the issue of matching funding, and one thing that occurred to me in reading that, sort of a win-win opportunity, is that matching funding, if it were matching funding from the City of London, has two advantages. One is that it helps, the City of London, in other words, were prepared to match a funding on a fundraising campaign. First, it helps push agendas which are interesting to the City of London and important to them. But secondly, it helps contribute to that perception that you're trying to generate of a degree of distance between the City of London and the Heath, an independence such that the City of London becomes, in that context, a donor rather than an owner. And obviously we know how complex that relationship is, but I think a lot of this natural environment review has been trying to focus on creating that sense of independence. So the idea of a fund within the city that could match the funds of proposals from on the Heath could have those two benefits.
Thank you. Yeah, I think to respond to that, from April onwards, we can, I know it's always been true, the money has contributed to the Heath, but it really will be true, next year. Everything, whether you are having, swimming or going to the cafes, that money will be coming back in, and that money will be driving the mission of the Heath. and the protection of it. And I think that's a really important message, whether it's a personal training license that's being paid for, the dog walkers, all of that money will stay within and will help alongside the philanthropic money and alongside a significant contribution from the city. I think it's a really exciting position for a charity to be in, personally. That's why I'm happy to be here.
Well, thank you for, yeah, there's lots to be done. There's a question at this corner here, but Teresa.
So I suppose I think the funding ideas outlined in this paper are lovely, and that there's like 19 and 21, there's lots of examples. They're really positive and charming, but I just worry about them not landing well at the moment because you've got 18,500 people signing a petition against Daisy Green. It's not going to land well. It's almost like you need to wait until the dust has settled from that to launch this, because the public perception is just, it's all going to be all wrong at the moment, and it's going to be a mess. It's really sad. But and also I want to sponsor a tree.
You got 4.
That's it. I've got a few up there. No, absolutely. Point taken. I think that's why the different streams and
Use the microphone, just people online.
my apologies. Yeah, absolutely. I think that's why you do look across your different income streams, and you look. The pergola is a great example. That will be a small number of high value donors that will, absolutely, we'd like an opportunity for some sort of crowdfunding. But the reality is a £5 million project will come from large donors who, may be able to have a conversation outside of some of the more controversial issues on the Heath.
Yes, Michelle.
Hello, Susanna. I think we've spoken briefly, but I haven't actually met you in a meeting or anything. Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, it all sounds good. Obviously, I'm the butt girl tonight. I suppose there's a couple of things. Well, mainly following on from what Victoria said, there, the word that often comes up in these meetings is the parkification of the Heath. And, when you think about, say, the drinking fountains, is that going to mean little signs saying this was sponsored by X? I mean, I assume it is.
Well, we have specifically got the Heath and Hampstead Society who have funded that. So in that situation, absolutely. Nice. Yeah, I think recognition is important. My principle is if something is on the Heath, it should be useful, it should be beautiful. I mean, and in lots of cases, I think if a funder is willing to not be physically recognised, even better. I understand that for some people that's really important. If people are really happy for their name not to be physically somewhere, we'll absolutely find other ways to thank them and recognise them. I'd be really in favour of that.
Yeah, no, I believe you, but obviously some funders are going to want public recognition. The corporate that's going to do the bandstand. What does that look like, and how are people going to feel when they start to see signage of a certain type? And signs on, this has been sponsored by, or, this tree belongs to X. I think, having benches is one thing. I mean, I don't know, it might be very welcomed. It's just, it's just not a model that people are used to. And I don't think people, from what I know, the parkification word is one that I would just say bear in mind.
Yeah.
You will get a reaction to that. Can I also just ask quickly, how many fundraisers have you got in your team?
0.
Is it 50?
At the moment, it's me, yeah. Okay. This is part of the overall charity review, the work across all the open space charities, and it's about putting part of the strategy, like where are the priorities and where do we need to invest. What I would say is that the operations team, the projects team, that them being at full strength helps me. Ultimately, as a fundraiser, you communicate what the plan is. So if Charlotte's team are up to strength and able to really, or Adrian or whoever's on the Heath who's doing the work is able to really, has the time and they have the capacity, that's as important as having a team of fundraisers. So yes, it's about building this function, but it's also about making sure across the organisation we're at capacity. They're doing the work.
Thank you. Bill, do you want to add to what you've heard?
Just briefly, and Michelle kind of beat me to the punch on this a little bit. I think we have acknowledged that there's a lot of groundwork that needs to be laid at the corporation to step into this space. I think we are extraordinarily grateful that we got somebody of Susanna's expertise and experience, but we have to write policies on sponsorship and how do we do due diligence and all of this stuff that has to exist before you really step into a professional operation. And a lot of what Susanna and a lot of the work happening in the center is going to be looking at in these early years. And when you asked how many fundraisers are on the team, you know, we spent, I think the corporation spent about 12 million pounds on the Heath last year alone. There's a lot of expense that comes. Susanna leads on voluntary giving. She leads on everything else. She leads on commercial, but she also leads on events, volunteering, and communications. Now, there's a natural line that runs through here, but the point being, we don't even have a full FTE doing fundraising yet. And we're stepping into the space, and we're grateful to the center for making the position available to start. But this is my very long way of saying there's going to be a runway, a long runway on really getting up to speed on this stuff. And we're going to be looking for early wins. And I invite Susanna to correct me if I'm misspeaking now, because this is her area of expertise and looking for early wins and trying to think about long-term aspirations and work with them soon. But just because we have somebody in post doesn't mean we'll flip a switch and money will fall out of the sky. It's going to take some time to set the framework, to set all the policies. And I think we want to make sure we have an operation that's fit and built for purpose. But I'm seeing a lot of nods, so everybody I think understands that. So just to contextualize. But Michelle, you stole my thunder on those two, but thank you.
Thank you. I suspect that's probably all that we need to say for now. Clearly, it's an ongoing discussion, and thank you for the paper. I don't think there's anything else. I'm not seeing any other hands raised, in which case, happy to leave it there. Thank you very much. In terms of our agenda, in terms of the public session, questions on matters relating to the work of the committee, I'm not aware of any specifically beyond what we've already been discussing. There is not any other business that we haven't already covered. So that doesn't mean we have to do it. There is an agenda item about the date of the next meeting. Perhaps so you could just confirm formally what we do know.
Thanks, Chair. So yes, as discussed under the ponds item, there is a save the date for the 10th of February for that additional meeting. Confirmations will go out to members as soon as possible. The date of the formally scheduled meeting at the moment is the 21st of April. But yeah, as mentioned, you'll receive further updates about any additional meetings between then.
Thank you. Then we would move to our non-public session.
Thank you, Chair. So does the committee agree to exclude the public, please? Thank you. Please wait while I stop the recording and live stream. And members of the public, thank you for attending, and may you please leave the room.
Thank you.